Welcome to episode 293 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you as always by Betano.ca. The game starts now, and the games continue tonight. Of course, the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. You got some teams pretty much all in action as the Islanders are taking on the Rangers Montreal tonight. Then you have Philly taking on the Rangers, Detroit and Pittsburgh in a head-to-head matchup. Can Detroit afford another head-to-head loss like they did to the Capitals? No, they can't. So you can get into that. And of course, the Masters, all of it at Betano.ca. Frank Saravalli, of course, joins me, Jason Greger. And Frank, we'll get to the playoffs, but of course, the big news that you broke yesterday, that the Coyotes, it's not official, but it's pretty far down the road. It looks like they will be relocating to Utah.
That is the plan. That's close to being fully firmed up and agreed upon. This has been in the works for a few weeks, and there's a lot to unpack as to how and why and machinations and all that stuff. But gotta say, I feel pretty bad for Coyotes fans. There's not much to root for there. And there hasn't been for 2 decades. So every rink you go to, invariably you hear someone, the PA announcer, pumping up the best fans in hockey. And I'm like, no, those guys are in Arizona because their team has been no good. They've run through a clown car of owners, and they don't even have a proper NHL arena, yet they show up, they care, they're passionate. That to me is a real fan.
Yeah,
that ain't a bandwagon person.
I know some people say, well, they don't have a lot of them. It doesn't matter the amounts. It's the ones that are diehards. And you know what? Obviously, there'll be some staff people that likely won't be relocating, I would think, right? So that there's that. Obviously, that's a concern, no question. I think that's the biggest one for me. And I've seen some people reporting, the players are concerned about no trade lists and stuff. That's such an easy fix. You just honor it for this calendar year. And before every season starts on July 1st, the players who have no movement clauses and list their teams, you get to update that every year. It's not like you do it once for the term of your contract.
I don't understand the complaint. What are people saying?
Yeah, I don't get it either. And the players themselves, get a relocation stipend to ensure that, all their costs, everything that they have to incur to move is covered as well.
Yeah, there's not going to be any out-of-pocket expenses. If you sell your house or whatever, their closing costs will be taken care of. The moving expenses, all that stuff will be covered by an agreement with the NHL and the NHLPA. So no concern there. Look, you are uprooting some families probably. There's a lot of guys in the Coyotes team that don't have families yet, which makes it a little bit easier because it is such a young team. But I don't understand some of the belly aching that I saw on social media. And to be honest, some of the guys that I talked to are excited.
Oh God, how could they not be?
They're thrilled to go to potentially a city with some energy, new ownership, to be treated in a different manner, to play in a rink that's closer to NHL standards, even if Delta Center for a few years isn't going to be perfect. And just look at, it's not the same thing, but look at the excitement in Winnipeg. Look at the excitement in Seattle and Vegas. There's something thrilling about being part of something new, and a rebrand, a new team name, new logos, complete fresh start on the ice. Everything's going to be different. And I think a lot of guys on that team, although they might have liked living in the sun, and Phoenix is an unreal place to live, there was a big chunk of them that felt like they weren't even playing in the NHL.
Oh God, no! I talked to a few players who were former Coyotes, who'd been moved on recently, and it's just, they respect the city, the fan base. I think there's lots of questions in some of the professionalism of the organization from the ownership group, not so much management team, more the ownership group. How they run their social media is amateur hour and does not look good in some of the videos and things that they put out at
Most
times.
of it's been run by Alex Meruelo Jr.
Yes.
The actual owner's son.
Yeah. not ideal. I guess the big question, Frank, you talked about the the arena in Utah. Is the plan that they'll get a new one? Because this is similar to when they first moved to Phoenix many years ago, right? Where they had and no different than the Islanders in Brooklyn for a few years, where they don't have an NHL arena, where you have an arena, but the sight lines, there's lots of seats that aren't used in the games because they're not, you can't see the ice. So
one end of the arena is no bueno.
No.
In Utah.
So is there a plan that they will have an NHL arena soon? This is not going to be something where they're going to relocate to a terrible part of the city like they did when the Arizona moved to Glendale.
No, they're Ryan Smith has already done a lot of work on that. I believe he's actually received approval to go ahead and build one. You have to check the news stories on that, but there was an approval granted, I think, by Salt Lake City itself somewhat recently, maybe January, that kind of flew under the radar. And here's the other part is it's believed that the 2034 Olympics are going to Salt Lake City again. And usually that comes with new buildings too. So it will happen in the short term. It's not going to be forever that they're playing in Delta Center. I think the Jazz kind of needed although they've pumped in money in renovations, they've needed a new building anyway. So this is sort of the perfect impetus to go forward and build that, provided that, of course, they get the team.
Yeah. And nothing's official, but it's definitely all leaning in that direction. Is your understanding that part of this deal is going to have that the Meruelo has some sort of time frame where he will have the exclusive negotiating rights to bring a team back to Arizona?
I don't know the exact terminology, but what I'll say is there's believed to be part of some language somewhere that gives him an opening to get one. I don't think it's ironclad. I don't think it's a given. I think what they're talking about is a specific set of terms and conditions that if X, Y, and Z are met, then you might have the right to get one. And that really is going to involve a lot. It's going to involve building that new arena that you've been talking about for so long. And to then do it, the tough part for him is going to be to do it totally privately financed without a guarantee on the back end of it that he's getting a team, at least as far as I understand it. So would you spend $2 billion to then spend to build it, whatever the cost is, to then spend another $1.5 billion or $2 billion or whatever the expansion franchise fee is? Then it's a pretty big risk. How do you know if you build it that they're actually going to come, unless there's wording in the contract that we don't know about?
Field of dreams, Frank. If you build it, they will come.
Well, I believe that in general in Arizona, but I don't know that. I don't know that the NHL is dying to jump back in bed with Alex Meruelo based on how this has played out. And I think that's a really fair question to ask. What does he perceive the language in that deal to be? That's what I'd really like to know.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid. I think that's that's one where I wonder what the long term is for them. There's also been lots of I saw some people suggesting that Utah would come in and now they're going to rejig the divisions, and
I don't think that's happening.
No, I don't think that's accurate at all from the people I talk to.
No, Utah is really not far out of whack for the Central anyway, so it fits just fine. And I did want to comment quickly on the machinations of this deal. I saw a couple people kind of trying to pick a little bit at my reporting, saying that, hey, Salt Lake and Arizona aren't in discussions directly. I first off never claimed that they were. Second, the path for this deal, if you've been listening to this show and if you've been listening to Daily Faceoff Live with me and Tyler, I've been saying all along that the path would be to sell the franchise to the NHL. The NHL gets control and then sells it the same day to Ryan Smith and the Smith Entertainment Group in Utah. And that spread in between the proposed $1 billion that the NHL gives to Alex Meruelo and the 1.2 or 1.3 that they sell the franchise to Ryan Smith for, that 200 or 300 million bucks, that's what's going to get sprinkled between, I believe, 29 other owners, because I don't think Seattle or Vegas have a stake in the next relocation or expansion fee that comes in the door. So that's the plan, that's the process. And now it's about basically getting all this papered and signed and doing it in an expedient fashion where everyone can feel comfortable, because that's really what's at play here. And that's why the NHL is treading so carefully in how they address it, is because they don't want Alex Meruelo to get cold feet. At the beginning of this process, and I think this started sometime around January, there was a lot of pushback from Alex Meruelo, who was saying, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm getting this arena built. And it took a long time, and I believe a significant increase in funds that the NHL was originally intending to spend for this franchise to get control of it back. That part has been pretty interesting and fascinating to follow. I had heard a few weeks ago 900 million, and then obviously it jumped to $1 billion. So there was, clearly some negotiating behind the scenes, and they finally got Meruelo to a point where they could convince him, hey, look, this is a good deal for you. You spent 300 million or so for this franchise. You financed a lot of it. You've had debt service. You've had debt that you've accrued as you've been hemorrhaging cash. Here's a clear win for you financially. If you step away, not only will you have the financial win, but you can come back in a few years. That part, I think, has been exciting. And so they're just hoping that he doesn't turn at the last second and say, yeah, you know what? I decided that I'm going to keep the team. And you know what? If you don't like it, we'll see you in court. The last thing anyone wants, the last thing the NHL wants, is a protracted legal battle. And so that's why they've been treading really carefully.
Yeah. I would think, if it's this far down the road, I guess anything can happen. People always tell you until it's signed. And I'm sure some people listening have had a business deal of their own that they thought was agreed upon. And then at the last minute, someone, had an about face. So you never say never, but it definitely seems like it's trending that way. This is something, Frank, to me. We even talked about it. I said the minute they came out with that press release and the tweet on the same day that the 5 players were announced going to court, I thought that was the start of, hey, Utah is going to be in the NHL, and this was their way to show the Gary Bettman, hey, we'll do what you say, and we'll play in your sandbox. And then when Smith came out saying, hey, if we got a team, what would you name it? You never do that unless you actually have a team,
or unless you're given permission to start that process. Like he's not calling attention to it without that.
Yes, 100%.
And so you're right. I think they've played it to a T. The Smith group, they've done everything basically the NHL has asked, and that's how you get a team. You get in line, you kiss the ring.
Yeah, and so that I wonder what that would mean for expansion. There's a lot of people who thought Utah was one. I know there's still the Atlanta talk, and maybe Houston and other teams. But
so Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Houston Rockets, was in New York last week to meet with the NHL, and said in the Houston Chronicle yesterday that he's working on getting an NHL team. The fact that they're actively meeting would seem to suggest that expansion might not be that far off on the horizon as everyone thought.
No, yeah, it might be within a year or two. So,
especially with the fact that Houston, they've replaced their ice plant. They spent $15 or $30 million to do it last summer in Toyota Center. That's interesting. I'm not saying it's obviously not for next season, but no one wastes their time and goes to New York to meet unless you're serious about it.
Yeah.
And Ryan Smith made apparently multiple trips to New York.
Yeah. And usually the expansion, if you look back at the recent ones, Frank, they have the announcement a year before they're going to start playing, right? That's how it's always been. It's not like you announce it, then 6 months you have the team. Some it's actually been closer to 2 years. So, there'll be that official announcement, allows them to start branding their team, and then they plan and they strategize. They hire a general manager, a year out, and then they'll plan for the expansion draft. I guess my
Do you think
question would
there's
be,
any part, I was going to say, do you think there's any part that the NHL is kind of moving forward, at least publicly or not publicly, however you want to look at it? These word of these meetings leaked. Do you think there's any chance that they're jumping into expansion to maybe quell some of the, I wouldn't say disappointment, but 200 to 300 million bucks, whatever it ends up being, sprinkled among 29 owners, is not really that significant in terms of a relocation fee. And plus the price paid by the league potentially to get the Coyotes back relative to what it was at one point. Do you think that I believe that there are governors that are unhappy with how this has played out? And frankly, the fact that the NHL propped up Arizona for so long only to pull the plug now, does promising a windfall on the other end of this, whether it's 2 years from now or 3 years from now, injecting potentially as much as $3 billion or more into NHL coffers, does that make you forget about Arizona?
potentially, I will say, man, like, Meruelo, what he bought the team for, and then what he's going to get the team for, Frank, without really ever doing anything great, is like, I don't know how much luckier you can get in a business transaction for him.
Do anything great? Is there one thing that he did well?
Fair
Not
point.
was there one thing that he did competently, is what I would ask.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I'm telling you, there is stuff that has played out in Arizona that would make people's heads spin. I had heard varying stuff, and even just talking about relocation, people have painted me as some Coyotes hater, as if I care. Just through normal course of reporting, like, I've stayed on this relocation thing the whole time. What if I told you that at some point earlier this season, and I have this confirmed, the Coyotes weren't paying their hotel bills, and hotels around the league had banded together and demanded that the Coyotes begin paying for their hotel stays with a certified check up front so that they couldn't welch on it. That's fact. And in fact, the league had to step in and say, this is embarrassing. Handle this before it becomes news.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's a sign of why I would really question the willingness to want to even allow him back in as a future owner. Right? Like, when someone shows you who they are, as Maya Angelou said very wisely, believe them the first time. That would be my advice to the NHL.
Fair. And now we wait.
Now not much more. I think we've covered all of it for the Oats. One fun question. Do you think it'll be Utah or Salt Lake?
Ooh, that's a good question. I
vote Salt Lake. And now I know the basketball team has Utah, but to me, it's better when it's the city. That's just me. I like the city rather than the state. I think it's better.
I get the idea of naming it the state because you're trying to pull in fans. And Tyler says in our chat here that he thinks there's something about, a rule or something that they want teams to be called Utah, because what you're trying to do is pull in more population from the state to root for your team than just the people that live in Salt Lake. My argument would be there's not very many people in Utah outside of Salt Lake anyway. It feels like the population of the state is 3.2 million, 30th in.
And then that only works for states that have one team, right? Like, so
yeah, you're not calling them the Pennsylvania Flyers.
Exactly.
But
you might have to, just to annoy them.
Yeah, so the Salt Lake metro area is 1.25 of the 3.2 in the entire state.
Yeah.
So I would love to see them try and seize on the Grizzlies. I love their colors. I love their logo. What do you think?
Yeah.
Buy the trademark off of the ECHL team.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Now, I actually don't mind that idea at all. Like I've, Utah Grizzlies has a decent name to it. I don't mind it.
Dude,
To
what
me,
a
I was just
logo though. The mountains, the
no,
bear
the
eating the
logo
hockey
is great.
stick. Like it's
Yes, no, the
fantastic.
logo is fantastic. There's no question about that.
As long as we're not calling them the Salt Lake City Soakers.
Yeah. I know
And
I've seen it. Everybody's, online on my show yesterday. Everybody's like the Utah Yetis. Obviously there's the Utah Utes. They're obviously not going to take that one, but it'll be interesting. And the color, the other one is always, I'm interested in the colors and in what they'll come out with. So
the Utah Jazz is the most poorly named team in pro sports.
Well, it's because it relocated from New Orleans and then they kept the name.
But that's what I'm saying. They should have never kept the name. The Jazz never made sense. It's like the Calgary Flames. The Atlanta Flames made sense because of the Great Fire in Atlanta.
Yeah, but I don't mind. I guess maybe because I'm used to it. But
you're used to it. But when they moved in the 80s or the late 70s, they should have never. I think it was 1980. They should have never had that happen. They should have never taken the A that was on fire and just made it a C that was on fire. That was silly.
Is there what's the reason behind the Flyers? Why are they called the Flyers?
The Flyers was actually a naming contest. They received thousands of submissions and they narrowed it down to 10 or whatever. And Ed Snyder liked the logo that was drawn and liked the way the name sounded, and that's what they went with.
All right. It's like the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's not a lot of Penguins in Pittsburgh. So to me, I don't mind whatever the moniker is. If it flows off the tongue, whatever. The Jazz, the Jazz always stand out to me because they don't end in an S, and obviously they end in the Z, so it kind of stands out. It's one of the few in pro sports that doesn't have an S at the end of their name. So I kind of that's why it's easy for me to remember them. The Kraken, the Wild, the Lightning. So
you're that guy in Quizzo night that's like, yep, I got that one.
Well, those ones, the White Sox, the Red Sox are pretty easy to remember those. The Heat. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Hey, you were ready for that. I was gonna say let's do a little quiz at the end, but we don't even need to now.
No, I know.
Utah Yeti would be a good one then too. Don't put the S on it.
Yeah, don't have to put the S on it. So we'll see.
Now that'd be a big trademark, I think. Not trademark issue, but like the Yeti itself. You're not now. You got a little brand confusion. Hey, but there was brand confusion with the Kraken rum that had existed too.
Oh, buddy, Kraken rum is great. Actually, I have it here. It's quite good. Have you ever had the dark black? Ooh, very tasty. Little shout out to them. It's quite enjoyable if you've never had it. Let's get to some on ice stuff, Frank, because the pillow fight of the race. Hey, it continues on. And tonight we have Detroit and Pittsburgh. Washington's playing Buffalo. The Islanders are taking on the Canadians. The Canadians are right front and center here. They just spanked Philadelphia. Now they play the Islanders. They play Detroit back-to-back to end the season next week on Monday and Tuesday. So it's funny, like the Montreal Canadiens, there's no team that has a better chance to play spoiler down the stretch than the Habs.
Agree. And had Kent Hughes on Frankly Speaking this week and had an unreal 40-minute conversation about the state of the Canadians. And we talked a little bit about that when we did their postmortem last week, that there's a lot, I think, exciting happening right now for the Canadians. You think eliminated team, you think not exciting. And I'm like, look at the young guys, look at the way Slavkovsky's playing, the hat trick this week. Look at everything that's on the way, and now add in the chance to play spoiler. Like, that's galvanizing. We talked at length before they got whacked on Monday's show about the Flyers and how this, I think it doesn't really put a damper on their season. It's sobering. This is a sober finish. But man, even when you're ready to count out the Caps, they come up with an enormous win this week against the Wings.
Oh, dude, you can't count them out, man. I give them a lot of credit, man. They just, they continue to find ways to win just when you think you're going to count them out. I can't count them out until they're officially out. I'm not doing it anymore because you just look foolish. So I wouldn't count them out at all tonight. Like I look at the Capitals tonight. Buffalo obviously is a team that's out, but they're not an easy win. The Capitals can lose to teams you don't think they'll lose to, and then they win games you probably don't expect them to win. Ovechkin becomes the first player in NHL history to have 18 seasons with at least 30 goals. He also has the most 40-goal season, is tied for the most 50-goal season. So he's a pretty good goal scorer, just in case anyone forgot. Like, I think he's honestly going to be the first 900 goal scorer. It's not just beating Gretzky's record. He's going to get to 900 goals, which is mind-blowing to me.
Did you really make a big leap there from 894 to 900?
Hey, I'm just saying, buddy. But still, hey, first 900 is the first 900 round number. It's no one's going to say, hey, he's the first guy at 895. It doesn't sound as good as first guy to 900. It's just how it is.
Okay. I was flogged today, by the way, speaking of goals, on Toronto radio, when they said, well, if Austin Matthews gets to 70, how does that factor into your Hart ballot? And I said, it doesn't really.
No.
They said, why? And I said, well, it's only 6 more than McDavid scored last year. It's impressive. No doubt that he's the 13th player in NHL history to get to 65, and that he's the highest, scoring single season in the salary cap era. All those things are great, but because he gets it's not a magic trick that all of a sudden it goes from 69 to 70. Nice. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's award this man the Hart. That's not how it works. Yeah. There's no magic trick here. It's not like we're not rolling the odometer back in the day and like all of a sudden, whoop, it clicked to 70. Here you go.
Like my question is, if you're going just head to head, what makes him more valuable to his team than Kucherov or McKinnon, who I think are the two front?
Nothing.
Yes, there's nothing
right now.
Right?
Today,
he's
I would have
on 36% of his team's goals, to 50 for Kucherov and 47 for McKinnon. Right? So if you look at goals, yes, he has more goals, but McKinnon has Kucherov has 60 more assists. McKinnon has close to 50 more assists. He has 15 more goals than McKinnon. And then it's a conversation.
I don't even think it is one. Like, if Austin Matthews is on my ballot, he's going to be 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going much higher than. How could you make the argument that his season's been better than Panarin?
Yeah, that's
or more valuable to his team. Either one.
Yeah.
And then the response was, oh, well, Austin Matthews might be a finalist for the Selke. Like, okay, great. They're like, in order to be a good two-way forward, you have to be a lead at the other end. Like, okay, sure. But why are we trying to diminish the candidacy of others to pump up Austin Matthews and this?
That always weakens your point. That's the way I look at it. To me, if you have to try to disparage a guy who's had an unreal year, I don't disparage anything about Matthews. It's amazing what he's done, but I just say compare all of the numbers. What puts him above? 70 goals is 70 goals. That's one stat. The MVP isn't based on one stat.
And he didn't get there yet, by the way, and may not.
Yeah, I hope he does. I like round numbers, so I hope he does. I think it's it's like McDavid getting to 100 assists. Kucherov, I think, get to 100 assists. McKinnon could become only the 5th player, Frank, to have 50 goals and 90 assists in a season. Like, that's, to me, that's a uniqueness, because you're doing both aspects of the game. You're a scorer and a playmaker. The only guys who have done it are Gretzky, Lemieux. They did it. Gretzky did it multiple times. Lemieux did it multiple times. 8 and 4, and then Yzerman once. Pat LaFontaine once. That's it. That's the list of guys who have had 50 goals and 90 assists. So, and I look at McKinnon, and you look at the rest of that Colorado team. Like, I'm sorry, it's just McKinnon has been an absolute force. I know people try to, look at Kucherov has more points than his other guys, and that's fair.
Rantanen has had a 100-point season, by the way.
Yeah, no, and he's good. Rantanen's very good.
Look at the rest of the Avs team.
And look at Rantanen out of the lineup. Okay. What did McKinnon do? Scored a hat trick and had a point. I think he's pretty good even without him. But if you look at their 2nd to 5th scores on Colorado and Tampa, Tampa has a better supporting cast 2 through 5. Rantanen is the better number 2, but Tampa has a better 3, 4, 5. So you can always find different arguments to look at. I think it's
Kucherov is 53 points. Kucherov is 53 points of his next closest teammate.
Yeah.
5-3.
Yeah, it's impressive. There's no doubt. Like, it's, those two right now, I think it's going to be, and honestly, if I pick one, it's not like I like him clearly better. Like, it's literally like, I have to list one. You have to. That's, as a voter, you have to pick one first, one second. This would be the slimmest margin. I've voted for many years. I don't think I've ever come down to 2 guys being this close.
It's really odd, though, that if you scroll through social media, and I know obviously there's a ton of bias in general, but also recency bias. Like you watch McKinnon score the hat trick the other night, and I see people tweeting like, "Oh, just solidified the Hart," and I'm thinking to
One,
myself, it doesn't come down to one game. First off, and second, I don't know about you, but I'm not awarding extra style points because I realize that he's bulled his way through the rest of the league, quite literally bulldozed them and defensemen at times. That's really impressive, but because Kucherov doesn't play the same way doesn't mean he's less important or less effective or less valuable. So I think people are kind of, and I'm not speaking for voters, I think I get the sense from reading people's coverage. Like I saw something that ESPN put out yesterday that was like 77% of voters have in their poll that they do, 77% have McKinnon as the winner. And it's like, first off, I think even doing polls like that are problematic,
yeah.
and shouldn't happen because they sway voters. And second, why like style points? I don't know that they should factor in. Will they for you?
No, because you can get caught up in, players. There's different ways to be elite. I think McKinnon, McDavid, and Kucherov show that.
They all
They
do it
are elite,
differently.
very different ways in how they approach the game. One isn't better than the other. Leon Draisaitl, when he won the Hart Trophy, he doesn't attack with the same speed that McKinnon or McDavid do. But you know what? He's an elite passer. He's an elite scorer. So he slows the game down. He can play well when he engages on contact. There's a lot. Ovechkin and Crosby is a great example. Look how different those two were, and they're both elite. So yeah, I've never really bought into that. You can't. I think it's unfair. Well, this guy does this better. Well, this guy might do that better, right? Like that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it fun. Is to have that to have that great. And I do want to make one other point, Frank, because I've seen a lot of people mention Sidney Crosby, and they're like, "Well, Sidney Crosby's like Taylor Hall." No, he isn't. Not even close. Sidney Crosby 5-on-5 is +5. When he's off the ice, the Pens are +5. They're the exact same team. When Taylor Hall won the Hart, he was +19 at 5-on-5. And the Devils, when he was off the ice, were -26. +19, -26. Don't mention Crosby and Hall, people. You're embarrassing yourself because you're not looking at anything.
Who is doing this? I was going to say, why did Taylor Hall suddenly start catching strays?
Yeah, like it's ridiculous. I think people forget how dominant of a season he had as a player there. Right now, it's rare because he finished 6th in league scoring, which is the lowest outside of Kennedy with the Maple Leafs, which is, if you ever wanted to go back to Hart Trophy voting, it's the most confusing Hart Trophy of all time. You look up when Kennedy won for the Maple Leafs. It makes absolutely no sense. Like, there's no statistic you can look at that why that guy would have won that year. I don't get it. I'd love to talk to some people who were voters way back when. I'm not sure any is alive, but that's the one. If you want to look at the confusing Hart Trophy, you look at that one. But this race is awesome. I think it's good. I think the other one, Frank, to look at is I think the Selke is actually going to be a really close race. I think the Norris Trophy is the interesting one because if you dig deep on some of Cale Makar's numbers, they're not like Cale Makar. When you think of Cale Makar, it's great, but if you dig into his number, I don't think his season is really that close comparable to Hughes. And there's other guys, Bouchard, Roman Yossi, and others, Noah Dobson, who arguably, if you dig into deeper numbers, might be having better seasons.
Don't tell anyone in Van.
Yeah. No. Hughes has had a really good season. I think Hughes is quite a bit.
I said that I thought that it was somewhat close between Hughes and Makar, and they laughed me out of the conversation.
Yeah, if you dig into Makar's numbers, like Hughes is quite a bit better in a lot of them. I think there's other guys though that are more comparable to Hughes. Actually, if people want to look, some might say it's too little, too late, and maybe that's the case. But I think there's other guys that would probably make a better argument if we're looking at overall numbers. And that's why, Colorado, I think people underestimate how much of an impact McKinnon's having on that team, because you look at their forward depth, it is not even close to what they were in 2022. Not at all. And defensively, when McKinnon's not on the ice, man, they're a minus team without McKinnon on the without McKinnon on the ice. Right? Like
McKinnon was good though.
Yeah, he was quite good. So, It'll be fun to see the race there. I do want to, when you look at those teams, Frank, in Pittsburgh and Detroit and Washington, the Islanders, and if anybody doesn't know, well, quickly, here's the remaining schedules. So, and no offense, Flyers, but I think you're out. I'm not even going to mention you today. But the Islanders play Montreal, the Rangers, the Devils, and Pittsburgh. Detroit has Pittsburgh, Toronto, and back-to-back against Montreal. And Washington has Buffalo, Tampa, Boston, and Philly. The Islanders obviously are in the driver's seat because they're 2 points ahead and then 3 points ahead of teams. So if they can go 500, they're pretty much in, right? The other teams have to go like 3-0-1 to catch them. So I think the Islanders are in a good spot. And then Pittsburgh plays Detroit, Boston, Nashville, and then they end with the Islanders, which might just, be an epic game for the final game of the season on the 17th. Do you like Detroit, Washington, and Pitt? When you look at their schedule and look how they're playing, is there one you actually feel more confident in?
Between the Islanders and Pittsburgh?
No, Detroit, Washington, Pittsburgh. I'm kind of giving the Islanders a playoff spot based on math and numbers.
Right now I would lean toward the Penguins, but they do have the tiebreaker.
Oh, yes.
But they're a point back. That's if I were to order the teams that I think are most likely to least likely, I would say Penguins, Caps, then Red Wings. But it's close between Pens and Caps. And by the way, like narrative wise, maybe it should be. These two teams have been compared to each other forever. It's almost fitting that it comes down to those two. If it does, they're in similar arcs in their builds and timelines. They've got similar pressures with generational stars that obviously Ovechkin has played fantastic down the stretch to hit 30. And Crosby's having arguably the best 36-year-old season we've seen in ever. Is that good? So there's a lot to root for on both sides in terms of seeing one of those get in. It's a shame that it's not going to, not to disparage the Islanders or whatever, but it's a shame that we can't have both. And by the way, it's a shame that I don't know how exactly it's going to shake out, but man, it would have been awesome to have Canes, Pens in round one. Jake Gensel and the Canes going against the Pens.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's like having the Islanders and the Rangers, right? Which, by the way, could be a juicy little rematch later this week. I'm sorry, I don't think Pelican Zibanejad was. That's you can't have more incidental contact. I love the gamesmanship of the coaches. We're getting close to the playoffs. Bednar's calling out the Ekholm hit on Rantanen. You got the Rangers bench boss freaking out. Oh, Pellick knew what he was doing. Everybody's going nuts. It's awesome. I can't like that game coming up on Saturday between the Rangers and the Islanders, man. Are you kidding me? It's must-watch TV now. I want to see what happens. I hope there's a little animosity in that game. It'll be great.
Be unreal. At some point, could we get those two teams in a playoff series?
I know. Like, somehow, if the Islanders can finish in the second wild card spot, then it can happen. It's hard, but that's what would need to happen.
We didn't talk about the West at all, but it was interesting watching the St. Louis Blues tweet out the Golden Knights result last night with an eye emoji, as the Golden Knights have lost 3 in a row, and the Blues they've got their work cut out for them. I mean, they need to be perfect.
Yeah, well, the Blues got to win 3 in a row, and if Vegas goes 1-2-1, they're in because they would likely own the tiebreaker. So, I don't see it happening, but I will say, man, Vegas, I get that they won the Stanley Cup last year, but I could easily see them being like the defending champs last year, Colorado, who lost out in the first round. Vegas right now, Frank, does not look good at all. The Connor McDavid-less Edmonton Oilers dominated them last night. They only gave up 18 shots. I know that Vegas was without some guys in that game, and we'll see how many of them are ready for the postseason or not and how healthy they are. But I've looked at Vegas's numbers now for a long time. Since March 1st, they're 26th in goals against, 3.5 goals against, right? Like this talk about, I don't believe you can just flip a switch. I went back and looked at teams, and you can be okay, Frank, and maybe be 5-5 your last 10 games after being, but to go 6 or 7 weeks where you are 26th in goals against, it's never happened for a team that has playoff success. So now maybe Vegas will be this outlier that suddenly just flips a magical switch, but They did not look good in Edmonton last night at all. Like, at all.
I don't know. And what about
like, I think if you're Vancouver,
can the Oilers catch the Nucks, and will the Jets catch the Avs?
I don't think the Jets are going to catch the Avs, but
they're only 2 points back with a game in hand, and they own the tiebreaker.
Yeah, well, that's true. So they're right; they have a chance. But I look at
the Jets have played. The Jets have quietly turned it around, winning 4 in a row again.
Dude, well, that looks like that's the one series that we know in the West, right? It's really the one series. Like, I do think it looks pretty good that you're going to have Tampa, Boston, and Florida, Toronto, but it's not as clear cut as the Central Division. Like,
yeah, you're right. Colorado, that's probably the one matchup that's actually locked in.
Yeah, Colorado and Winnipeg. And I'm telling you, you saw Hellebuck play against Nashville, man. If I'm an Avs fan, that's what concerns me. Is Hellebuck can go Hellebuck. I don't think he can do it for a whole playoffs. You know, you need more offense. But my God, he was ask Preds fans. They're like, what? This guy, are you kidding me? He was amazing in that game. It took overtime for Winnipeg to win on the Kyle Connor goal. But man, I'm telling you, that's a guy like that for one series. That's what scares me. Like, that's going to be an epic battle, Winnipeg and Colorado. And home ice, you're like both team. Like, Colorado's a dominant home team, and Winnipeg, you get the whiteout, man. That's pretty intimidating place too. So yeah, Colorado, I think, is going to want to.
Dude, that would be a great series.
Oh, I think that will be a very good series. So it should be fun. And Edmonton and Vancouver, that's a big game on Saturday night. I would expect if I'm the Edmonton Owners, I'm not playing McDavid on Friday. I don't want him coming off an injury to play back to back. I don't think any reason for it. So I rest him Friday. Like, you should be able to beat Arizona. I know Arizona's played really well. They're by the way, 6th highest scoring team since March 1st, by the way. They can score suddenly. But you're the Oilers. You should find a way to win that game. And then you got Vancouver. And if you beat Vancouver, then the Oilers then they're really in control. They would be ahead of Vancouver still with games in hand. So that would be the advantage. So Saturday night could be a big one, Oilers and Canucks.
Sign me up.
Now, let's get to Tyler Yaremchuk.
What's going on, gentlemen? I'm back with another edition of Fill in the Blank. It is delivered by DoorDash, where our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. All you need to do is download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code NATION25. I got 3 fill in the blanks lined up for you guys here. We'll start. You touched on Alex Ovechkin and his record-setting 30-goal season. But I want to know, this year it was a grind for him to get there. He was, at 8 heading into the All-Star break or heading into the calendar flipping, whichever one it was. So I want to ask you guys, Ovi has a blank % chance of keeping the streak going and hitting 30 again next year, Jason.
Oh, yeah, because I just don't think, like, he got to 30 by being, like, very bad or unproductive, I should say, for 50 games. I think it's going to be really hard for him to match that again next season. And I honestly think this offseason, guys, now that he's even closer to Gretzky, I just think the excitement builds. And he showed himself, hey, you know what? I can come back. I can still be a goal scorer. So, yeah, I think Ovi, 30 goals, I would lock it in. The only thing that derails him from 30 would be an injury.
So what's your percent? As for percent,
I will say 95%. He scores 30
holy
goals.
Whoa. High on Ovi.
Bro, did you watch the first half of this year?
Buddy, guys, hey, that's my point.
Dude, whatever he did in Dubai, I need that.
Yeah, well, that's my point. The guy had a week off.
You cannot tell me for 1 second that all of a sudden something just magically changed. And a guy that looked absolutely lost and couldn't move goes away to Dubai, doesn't play hockey. I'm not alleging anything, illegal or mysterious or offside. I'm just like, you can't tell me that something didn't change. This isn't just better luck.
Well, what about Samsonov? What's the difference, right? Samsonov went away for a week, didn't play any games, came back.
But Samsonov started fine.
No, but dude, he got sent to the minors because he was playing terrible.
But his first month of the season wasn't like that. Was it? I don't remember it being that bad.
I get what Gregor's saying, though. Like, again, he went to Dubai. He has his family with him.
Why'd you pick another Russian?
Well, just because he's the closest example to a guy who had a week off and then came back and has been very, very good.
I guess. But he didn't go to Dubai.
Yeah, but my point was
He went to Rico Coliseum and the Marlies. Like, these are not, you're saying like you're injecting a total non sequitur to this, and you picked a Russian. Like, what?
But why? Like, I mean, Dubai. I know
Who does that for the All-Star break? Like, who goes there?
Rich Russians.
The greatest goal scorer in the NHL history. That's who.
I'm sorry. What percentage
dude,
I would
Ovechkin had a 6% shooting percentage, dude. Like, it's one of those things where it's an outlier that was never going. You think like that's 6%.
Did you watch? I'm not asking you what his shooting percentage was. Did you watch?
Yeah, I watched. He looked slow. And you know what the other thing is? He looked like a guy who even the best players at times can struggle with confidence and a lack of confidence. And his extended. So anyway, I'm saying 95. We'll see. What are you saying?
I'd say 55 or 60 is a realistic. That's a realistic percentage.
It would have been
95%. Like what?
Well, he's been 100% for 18 years.
Okay, Tyler, what would you say? What does 95% convert to in odds world?
I mean, it's probably something like minus 1,000 or whatever. I'd have to pull up a calculator and check.
So Jay, 1,000. would you if let's just pretend that your number is accurate and it is minus 1,000, would you bet that? Okay, would you bet? So this is the equivalent of what you're saying. Would you bet $2,000 to win 100 that Ovechkin will score?
No,
30
because
next year?
but that's a ridiculous comparison.
So that's what I'm telling you. Your percentage is absolutely ridiculous.
No, my percentage is realistic, and the reason they're giving me those odds is because they think it's realistic.
No one thinks 95% is realistic for him to score 30 goals again next year. It's not a minus 2,000 bet.
Well, I'll bet. Then let's make a bet right now. What do you want?
Let's do it for charity. If you have to bet $2,000
no way
for charity, and I will take the inverse of this, or I'll take my 55 or 60%, and we'll both make the contribution to charity.
Well, no, yours is a chicken shit bet. It's easy.
I know.
It said 60%.
I'm telling you. Okay, Tyler, what is 55 or 60% in odds?
Like minus 125. Yeah, minus 125 is 55%.
I will bet the same amount of money. I will bet $2,000 on it, and it will go to charity. And you have to bet 2,000 to win 100.
Yeah, but
that's
I'm not making
right
any
now.
for charity. I'm making $100 for charity. That's the dumbest bet I would ever do.
But you're going to contribute your capital too, because that's what we're going to do.
Well, how could I contribute my capital if I'm losing the money?
Well, you're going to have to dig into your pocket again.
Just mark it down. April 11th next year, Frank will be coming on. Well, Gregor, you were right. Let's just mark it down because it'll happen.
If you're listening to the show as a podcast and you're not one of the people who watches it on the Daily Face-Off YouTube, I recommend just going and watching this last 3 minutes on the YouTube because it's been
Tyler
pretty funny.
Laugh.
The look. I swear I could start one of these with like, so guys, blueberry jam or strawberry jam, and you guys would just yell for 4 minutes and the segment would be over. Okay, I do have a second one here.
It is absolutely preposterous that you said that you think it's a minus 2,000.
Why don't you get the pine out of your crotch from sitting on the fence? 55%. What a lame ass pick, just for the record.
Okay. Second one I got for you guys. Of the teams still in the hunt in the Eastern Conference playoff picture, so the group that hasn't clinched, the Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, and Red Wings, the team that have the best chance of going on a Panthers-esque run is blank, Frank. If you had to rank them, who'd be number one?
So what's the limit of what we can select? Like, how good of a team?
Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Red Wings. The teams still in the hunt who haven't clinched.
I would go Islanders, Penguins, Capitals, Red Wings.
Jay?
Can I go none? The Panthers were really good the year before. None of these teams were really good the year before. They get in. Could they win? Or I guess, well, see, the Islanders are probably playing Carolina. I don't see that happening.
But could Sorokin win a series is the question, essentially.
Yeah, could he? I don't think so. So I honestly, Sorry, Pens fans. Sorry, Islander fans. I don't really think any of them have a very good chance. But Carolina is an absolute wagon right now. So I might mark even though the Islanders have the best chance to make the playoffs, I think I might give them the least chance to win a round because Carolina is just they don't have a weakness right now. They look very good. So.
Last one, I'm going to head over to our friends at Betano, give you guys the Masters odds this weekend. Tee off in about 15 minutes, actually, from when we're starting to record this podcast. Scotty Scheffler is the runaway favorite at plus 400, followed by McIlroy, Rahm, Schauffele, and Matsuyama. Matsuyama and Koepka actually both rounding out the top 5. They're tied. Give me a Masters pick, Gregor.
Well, I love being a homer in the Masters, so I want Nick Taylor to win, but and I'll go 2. So that's my homer pick. And then I'll go Xander Schauffele.
Nick Taylor, very far down the odds board. You can get him at 149 to 1. And you better believe I have a little on Nick Taylor at 149 to 1. Frank, who do you like?
There you go.
I mean, it's not minus 2,000, but fuck. I will say Jon Rahm.
Jon Rahm, 9 to 1. Not bad. Yeah. It should be an interesting one. Jordan Spieth's got like a shoulder or a knee thing or something going on. But yeah, he's a little bit further down the odds board. Anyways, all the odds for this weekend up over at Betano. And that is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank. As always, delivered by...
We got to keep track of these predictions because earlier in the year, Frank was all over me when I was still ripping on the Kotkaniemi contract. Oh, no, it's a good contract. No, it's a terrible contract. It looks even worse again this season. So we're going to start keeping track of these because I'm marking this down in my Excel spreadsheet.
Is this like when last week or on Monday you forgot the Canadians prospects that are on defense and you were like, oh, they don't have any? Like, if you want to start playing the game, we can do it.
No, dude, I never said they don't have any prospects. I said they don't have any experienced players. You wanted to bring in all their prospects like youth is going to win. And we'll see what happens.
I said is they are well stocked on the back end.
Well stocked, and then they can trade some of them for an experienced defender because that's how you're going to win.
Okay. My brain
not going to win with all youth. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
Just like, did you win in the daily?
You know the guys, and you wanted to shit on their defense. So now you're telling me you want to keep score.
Yeah, well, let's keep score. I know who their players are. I said they needed to get experienced defensemen was my point. Had nothing to do about not having good prospects. The point is, can't have all prospects. No team does. Name a team who wins with all prospects.
It's been a week, Uncle.
Did you win at the Wendy's Daily Survivor?
No, I was so consumed. I forgot to put in my pick like an idiot.
Oh, that is the worst. I've done that way too many times. Like I'm probably the best at being a loser and not getting his picks in, but it's coming down to the wire. $5,000. But more importantly, you can get the Cinnabon pull apart. Now that thing, I'm not a loser at. It is good. Have you tried it yet, Frank?
Dude, me and Cinnabon.
Oh, it's unreal. Like it is worth it. Like to me right now. I just want to win simply to get the Cinnabon pull apart because I purchased a few, and to win one would be like the Stanley Cup of food.
I can't even walk by a Cinnabon store in the mall. No. I try and just avoid the food court.
So you'll have 1 week left to get it, unless you're in for this week. But you have 1 week to run the table and win. Go to dailyfaceoff.com and look up for the Wendy's app. It's in the top right corner. You can't miss it. Provided by Wendy's and the Wendy's app.
And a little sneak peek. Get ready for our playoff game. We got something coming. I can't tell you more details, but we're cooking something.
And quickly, there's no deadline, is there, Frank, for in all your reporting on the Utah thing? Like, do they have like, we have to have this done by a certain date?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, they have basically until June.
Yeah.
They got plenty of runway.
Yeah, I would guess they'd want it as soon as possible. Like if you're the Smith group, you want to have as much time as you can promote your team. I understand that, but knowing the NHL, they probably would like to get it done before the Stanley Cup goes too deep in the playoffs.
Oh, they'd like to have it done before playoffs so that it doesn't distract and the players leave Arizona knowing where they're going.
Like on the 19th could be an interesting
day. The 18th is the date I was told to circle. And conveniently, our guy Tyler will have boots on the ground. He is going to potentially the last. He's going to potentially the last ever game at the Mullet.
On the 17th.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My girlfriend, now fiance, is thrilled when I said, "Hey, Amber, during our 4-day trip, we're going to watch the Oilers. Then I might go cover a relocation press conference."
Get her a press pass. Tell her to experience it. It'll be fun. Honey, this is what you can expect in marriage, right? You don't want any surprises. This is good. You're kind of putting it out there early on. I think that's great. All right, we'll wrap things up and we'll chat with you next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.